So today I'm going to talk about sampling. As biologists, we are expected to do a lot of experiments, and understanding the basic principles of sampling is very, very important for us. So let me admit that I'm not a statistician. I'm a biologist, as like you. I'm a biologist. So I'll be talking at a very basic level. And my advice to you is whatever things that is being said here, if you have any further queries, you may please contact a statistician and clarify your doubts with a trained statistician. So today I'll be talking on population, trying to give some idea about what is a sample of a population, talk about sampling frame, then what is a sample size, and again I will also try to give some idea about two of the basic sampling methods like probability sampling and also non-probability sampling. Now the first question is why at the first place we should go for sampling. What is the purpose of sampling? I will tell you an interesting story. There was one very famous fisheries specialist. His name was Professor Homer Swingle. In the so he was a fisheries specialist, and he had done a lot of pioneering studies, and most of his studies are still being quoted. But one funny thing about his study is that he never believed in sampling, or none of his papers ever talked about the sampling procedures that he had followed. So if you look at the papers and all, you can easily understand that instead of sampling, he was employing the census method, or in other words, he was going for total count of his subjects of study. And naturally, as a fisheries expert, his basic interest was on fishes. So he used the pond as an ecosystem, and he tried to understand the fishes there. So instead of taking what we expect him to take samples of this population and do the study, but interestingly, he counted every fish in the pond where he used to conduct the study. Fortunately, he had a lot of students and other supporting staff, so he could manage to do such a censusing or a total count. But that is not always possible, as foresters especially. We deal with a very large area, and you know that forests are a mosaic of ecosystems. That means if you walk through the forest and all, you can find different kinds of landscape. As you walk through, you go through different ecosystems. That is why I said we encounter a mosaic of ecosystems. So we need to identify different areas, and that areas we had to, and upon that areas we need to, we are only able to study a little bit of that area, and that is the necessary of going for sampling procedures. So let us see what is the everybody knows what is the definition of a sample and all. A population. The population is an entire group that you want to draw conclusions about it. That is what what is a population, the definition, the textbook definition of population. Okay, and sample is a subset of the population. That is, you have a very big area and you are not able to do like what Professor Swingle was doing. So you need to have a smaller areas, representative areas of a population, and that is called a sample that you know. So what is the advantage of sampling? Sampling actually provides you with a lot of opportunities to draw meaningful or reasonable inferences about a larger population. Now, coming to sampling frame, that is another terminology that we need to understand when we do attempt to sample a population. Entire target population, in our case, we can say the entire vegetation of a forest area, like for an example, like for example, a moist deciduous forest that we are planning to study. So that the entire, so if you are considering a moist deciduous area, the entire vegetation, since you are studying vegetation, the entire vegetation there, the type of species there, the individual species there, their count, that is called a sampling frame. And sampling size, sample size, that is another term. Sample size is the ideal representative size of your population. So, as I said, we cannot count the entire area or count the vegetation in the entire area. So, what we do is we will go for we will try to identify a sample population. And in forestry and all, we say that in a large area we will go for say 1% sampling or 5% sampling or something like that. And depending on the extent of the population, in the case of forestry, it spans several hectares and all. So we have to decide on a um, uh, uh, good sample size. And how to decide the sample size means there are statistical ways to determine your sample size. And I understand that nowadays there are online calculators also where you can go for fixing the sample size. But ideally, I will say that you have to consult a statistician to finally fix your sample size. But the thumb rule, as everyone knows, that larger the sample size, larger will be the or greater, or rather greater will be the accuracy of the inferences, and you can say that with a lot of confidence. So larger the sample size, the more accurate and confident, more accurately and confidently you can make inferences about the whole population. That is one thumb rule that you should never forget. So again, I will again emphasize that to draw valid conclusions from your results, you have to carefully decide how you will select a sample that is representative of the group as a whole. That is one important thing that you should keep in mind. Now, coming to sampling methods, we have just seen what is the importance of sampling. Why we have to do the sampling at the first place, and what is a population, what is a sample, and sample frame and sample size and all.